Hello, boys. Sorry that I cannot be there today, but no worries. We still got some notes to take. Let's start with some reminders from the videos we watched for today. By the way, all of the slides with objectives and outline are all on mySJ for you. Um, First, why does the church exist? In short, it exists to allow human beings to be active collaborators in God's work of saving the world, both in our own lives and the lives of others. It passes down to us the best way to become the people God created us to be. We see this fully in what are called the evangelical counsels: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Now, members of religious life take vows to these counsels, but we are all called to live them out in the ways that are appropriate to our state of life. They lead us to what's called our telos, or our final end goal that we're created for, because they unite us to Christ who lives them fully. Those who live in monastic life are called monks. They practice these counsels by taking vows to them. There are other kinds of religious orders like mendicants and what are called clerics regular, who also take vows. They look different for each, but these are all states of religious life. Some examples of each of these three, right, would be that Benedictines are monks, Franciscans are mendicants, and Jesuits are clerics regular. These orders all look different, but they share these vows. Let's talk about diverse roles in the church. Before we do, what are some that you can think of? Go ahead and pause the video and in your guided notes, write down some that you can think of. Let's do three. Now, regardless of the roles that you just wrote, bishop, layperson, lector, music minister, teacher, doctor, whatever else you might have chosen, they all gain their call ultimately from Christ in what is known as the threefold office. Remember, right, this unit office here means role or job or position. The threefold office grants all Christians these three roles we are about to go over in a general way so that each of us can share in Christ's mission in a specific way to who we are. But what are these roles? Perhaps you've heard them before. Priest, prophet, and king. Now, by virtue of baptism, all Christians are called to these roles. Each of them have specific meanings. All are pointed to in the Old Testament, and they fully come to fruition in the person of Christ in the New Testament. The priestly role is to offer sacrifice. The prophetic role is to announce God to the world through word, action, and example. And the kingly role is to lead or govern the kingdom and work towards its betterment. Right? All three of these roles have distinct characteristics to them. But the question is, how are all of us as lay people, meaning unordained normal folks like ourselves, called to live out these roles? Again, pause the video and take a guess at that. How would you, in your current state of life, be a priest, a prophet, and a king? For the class answer, think of your own life. We're meant to sacrifice, to forego some good for the sake of God's kingdom. We're in Lent right now, so maybe we're aware of fasting and almsgiving as an example here. We can offer up the discomfort we experience to sanctify ourselves and also others. How are we called to be prophetic? Well, we can talk to our friends about God, yes, and we can live as an example of his love. Kingly, we're called to be leaders, and the best leaders aren't bossy. They're with the people. Think of the way that Jesus leads. He accompanies those who he meets day to day. Thinking about these specifically for you in your life could be a really good reflection question. If I was a good teacher, I don't know. Just saying. Shifting gears now, we're going to go ahead and learn about different liturgical rites in the church. First, let's define that word, rite, R-I-T-E, rite. It has two definitions. So a rite is either a ritual, just the ritual itself, like the rite of baptism, or it's a distinct body of ritual. Okay. So a liturgical rite is the second kind of rite. It's a body of ritual. When you think of Catholicism, you probably think of what we would describe as Roman Catholicism. In fact, there are 24 different Catholic rites, like Byzantine Catholic, Ruthenian Catholic, Maronite Catholic. These are all different rites in the Catholic Church. All of them are equally Catholic. They all follow the Pope. They all have the same dogmas and doctrines, but they're distinct rites. They differ only in discipline. So for some of them, right, their priests might marry. Their mass looks slightly different, and they might have subtly different ways of doing things. But if they aren't the same as us, well, then how can they be Catholic? Oh, sorry about that. Well, the way that rituals work for us as Catholics is that as long as the essential parts are taken care of, we basically operate on a system of formulas and rubrics, right? So think about literally a rubric you would have for a paper, okay? You have these boxes that sort of say you have to do these things in this way. And as long as you have that, Bob's your uncle, go ahead and do it whatever way you particularly would answer that question. So if you have the essential stuff, you're all set. This allows for a variety of cultural expressions that ultimately actually bring us together as one church. But what is the church's role in all of this? Well, remember what we said earlier. The church exists to offer us an opportunity to collaborate in the work of salvation. Sacramentally, this begins at baptism. By our baptism, we're brought into God's family, the church, and given the graces needed to be called into the threefold office of Christ as priest, prophet, and king. On a practical level, the church has many roles that honor each of our diverse set of gifts and talents. The church has work for people interested in the sciences and in the humanities, in the sacramental life and the work of social justice, in the public sphere and in private enterprise, and in all other areas too that you can think of. We often look at differences as things that take us apart from one another. But remember what Paul says about having one body with many parts. The reality of diversity in the church is that it builds what's called koinonia, meaning community or communion, because each of us are called to use our different gifts and qualities in service of the greater whole. All right, last slide now. We're nearly there. Write this down. The church is a sacrament of salvation and communion. We're going to need definitions here. A sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace, a sign that accomplishes what it signifies. Like how a stop sign both means and causes you to stop. The church both means and leads to salvation and communion. Salvation is deliverance from sin by Christ. It reinstates our relationship with God. We talked about this last semester with justification and sanctification, which ultimately get us to a point of glorification. And communion is the intimate fellowship we have with one another. Again, that word koinonia means communion. Now we see here that there is both a vertical and a horizontal dimension, right? The vertical is the connection between the individual, you, and God, so up and down. The church, through its sacraments and works, connects you to God. But also, very importantly, and we see this in Christ building a community around himself, we see this in him talking about how they should stay together. Whether two or more are gathered in my name, the 72 disciples sends them out in pairs, right? We see that Christ is very concerned and cares about building communion or community, this horizontal connection, right? Me and the other person next to me and the other people next to me and all around, right? This is a great mystery, right? This is the mystery of the church. And now, my mystery, I'm not talking about like a who done it of like, gotta solve it or something that's totally unknowable. Rather, when we're talking in the terms of like Catholic theology, a mystery is a truth of inexhaustible depth and meaning. Take the incarnation, for example. It's not that we cannot meaningfully talk about it. Rather, it's that in our talking about it, its depth could never be fully realized. We say this sometimes by saying it can be comprehended. I can understand the concept, but it can never be fully apprehended. I'll never wrap my mind around it fully. Okay? So that is all that I have for you guys. As I'll be on Kairos when you are all watching this, I ask that you please pray for all the retreatants and leaders in the retreat. Please offer up a Hail Mary or an Our Father for us. Thank you, boys. Love you, and I will see you next week.